Hey, it's the Week 10 preview with the NFL playoff odds on the FTN Fantasy Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast. I'm Aaron Schatz. You know me as that DVOA guy from FTN Fantasy. He is Mike Tanier, and you better be following his Substack at MikeTanier.substack.com. And we are here to talk about Week 10 in the NFL. Oh my God, I can't believe we are already halfway through the season. Time flies when you're watching football. Don't forget our sponsor, which is Underdog Fantasy. It's the best way to enjoy the game. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's the fastest growing app in the industry. It's really easy. You just pick over or under on various stats. And they offer a new customer FTN special with up to $1,000 on your first-time deposit. The Underdog app is so easy to use, and weekly contests are back, like the onside kick, the double doink, and the 2-minute drill. Head over to Underdog for a deposit match up to $1,000 when you sign up with code FTN. That is up to $1,000 extra. There's no better place to celebrate the NFL than Underdog Fantasy. So Camden Caps wants to know, what is the worst DVOA versus DVOA matchup of all time, preparing for the Giants and Panthers in Germany on Sunday morning? Now, I note that this is there are only 4 seasons in which there were 6 teams under minus 25% after week 9. And this is one of them. So if it feels like the bad teams are worse than usual, that's because they are.
They are. Now, the Giants aren't one of those teams, are they?
The Giants are not one of the bottom 6 teams. So no. In 2009, the good teams were really good and the bad teams were really bad. And my guess is if I went back and looked at the worst DVOA matchup at this point of the season or later, it's probably some game from 2009.
Right. And I remember 2005 or 6 had a bunch of bad years, and I would bet it's going to be an AFC South matchup between whichever 2 Jaguars and whoever else.
It was probably on Thursday night.
It was probably on Thursday night, and I was probably drinking beer and watching it. Like I'll be watching tonight's game, which will actually be good.
Yeah, and I will say one more thing about the bottom 6. It's the Panthers and 5 AFC teams.
Remarkable. And that's what colors all of our conversations about the AFC right now, is like that bottom has fallen out, leaving behind these teams like, I guess, the Jets, for example, that you could still say could theoretically wind up being.
Right, and one of those bottom is Miami, and we all believe Miami is a completely different team now with Tua Tagovailoa healthy, but yeah, they're bad teams, bad.
Right. And they're desperately trying to start their engine again and get back into the bottom of the race.
Don't forget, if you are watching us live on YouTube or Twitter, we are here at 11 a.m. Eastern on Mondays and Thursdays. You can make comments and ask questions. And we're going to start this week with Thursday night. That's tonight's game with the Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens are in the playoffs 99% with a win, 94% with a loss. Bengals with a much bigger delta, 61% with a win, 35% with a loss. The Bengals are 17th in DVOA. So because 18 teams are above average this year, because of those bad teams being so bad,
right?
The Bengals are a slightly above average team at 4-5. And I think we talked about this on Monday's show, that I keep wanting to poke them with a stick and be like, wake up, wake up, wake up, Bengals offense, wake up, let's go. And this is the game for their offense to wake up, because the Bengals are 5th passing, 27th rushing, and the Ravens defense is 3rd against the run and 23rd against the pass.
This is the opportunity to do it. By the way, also, the Bengals would drop to 2-4 in the AFC with a loss there. That explains some of the problems. Their tiebreakers get worse and worse. They'd be 1-2. They'd be swept, obviously, by the Ravens if they lose this, which takes the division pretty much away from them. They also have Khalil Herbert, right? He's going to be playing tonight.
I believe he's going to be playing, yes. Him and Chase Brown are now the running backs, with Zach Moss having a neck injury.
Right. I don't know how much that changes things. T. Higgins is doubtful for tonight. Also a big thing to watch. Orlando Brown, questionable at left tackle. That's a potential difference maker. And one more for you. BJ Hill, very important interior defensive player. He's questionable, obviously, against a team that goes out there with Derrick Henry.
The Ravens' defense is not a great pass rush, but the Bengals' offensive line is really weak.
Yes. And again, possibly dealing with an injury.
When Burrow can get the ball away, the Ravens are now the worst defense in the league against number one wide receivers, allowing 96 yards per game to number one wide receivers. So Jamar Chase could go off even in a loss.
Do you have an over-under? I don't have the over-under.
I didn't look up what the over-under is. It's probably pretty high.
It's probably pretty high. If it's in the 80s, even if it's 89 or something, I jump on it. It might be in the 90s, though.
Another thing I found from the FTN Stats Hub, hopefully you are a subscriber to the FTN Fantasy Stats Hub, the Ravens are a team that plays a lot of man coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Burrow this year, minus 3% DVOA versus man, but 39% against zone.
Interesting.
Because you think of Jamar Chase as a guy who can get open against man, but with Higgins injured, it's been a lot of doubling Chase. I still go back to the first game of the season, which was the loss to the Patriots, where they took Chase pretty much out of the game by doubling him.
Right.
And trying to let Yoshavash and Irwin and whatever beat them. Gesicki, I guess. Right. And I think the Ravens could do the same thing if Higgins is out, which he probably is, because doubtful players rarely play,
especially on a Thursday night game, and that's one strategy there. On the other side of the ball, Ravens in the red zone, 39 trips this year, 29 touchdowns. So that's 74.4%. That's the highest touchdown rate. I don't have their DVOA handy. That's their highest touchdown rate, though, in the NFL. Bengals, red zone defense, sixth worst, allowing touchdowns 68% of the time.
Yeah, DVOA is similar. Ravens super high, Bengals defense very low.
And that's like a Henry factor, obviously, when you're getting in close and you have no doubt how you're going to approach your red zone offense when you're the Ravens.
Camden Caps wants to know if Zach Orr is going back to a more wink style of defense. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the man and zone compared to a couple years ago and the blitzing compared to a couple years ago. But look, they're having problems covering. There's no question. What is the weakness of the Ravens? It's really obvious. It's the pass coverage. It's the coverage.
And they tend to give up big gash lapses. Big lapses. We've got him stopped. And here's 30 yards on 3rd and 17. There's a lot of that.
That being said, the Ravens offense is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That it is just, yes, they've stumbled with a couple of games. Certainly that Raiders game with the penalties, and they outplayed the Raiders and they lost anyway. And the Ravens are an inconsistent They're a great but inconsistent team.
Right.
So could they show up tonight at home and have a game where their offense doesn't go off and their defense just lets the Bengals score too many points? But is that likely? I don't think so.
I disagree. I agree with you. I don't think that's likely. The Ravens with Lamar Jackson starting are 9-2 against the Bengals. A lot of the Bengals' victories over the last couple of years were against Huntley, Brown, Josh Johnson, all these other guys. 9-2 with Lamar, and one of the losses, Lamar got hurt halfway through the game and Huntley came in. It kind of shows there's a disparity between these teams at more or less full strength. And that has me, in addition to everything else, leaning towards the Ravens. Spread 6.5?
6 last time I checked, and I think I would go the Ravens -6, but this is probably an avoid-ish game for me because, weird things happen on Thursday night.
Yes.
That the Bengals might cover. But if I had to pick, I probably would pick the Ravens.
I would probably pick the Ravens. I'm probably looking at a first half over and maybe a first half Ravens prop of some kind. Ravens have been outscoring their opponents in the first half, 143-81. But in terms of the spread, we've seen them let a bunch of teams kind of get back in late.
Hitchhiker's Pie wants to know if there has been analysis on home field advantage being stronger on Thursday nights. I don't think anybody has ever found that to be true. I know that we kind of feel like it should be true.
Yes.
If you're the road team and you're traveling and it's a short week, don't they seem to have more problems? A lot of the things that we feel are true about Thursday nights when you do objective research are not.
For a good example is the scoring and the quality of the games.
The amount of turnovers and whatever are not actually higher.
No, they're not higher. You're just watching one game, in the middle of your work week, as opposed to Sunday where you're flipping around on Red Zone and you're ignoring one of the weaker games.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of Sunday, let's get to Sunday, where the best games are almost all at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And we will start with the most important game of the week for playoff odds. It may not be the one you expect. It's the San Francisco 49ers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The 49ers are in only 57% of the time if they win this game.
Wow.
30% with a loss, which would give them a losing record. The Buccaneers are in 60% with a win and 28% with a loss. So an even bigger delta for the Buccaneers, because these are two teams that are, what is the 49ers are 4-4, the Buccaneers are 4-5. They're teams that are better than their record, according to DVOA, so they should be in the playoff race in the second half. But there are a lot of good teams in the NFC, so it's kind of hard to make the playoffs. The big thing for me here, other than the fact that this is very likely Christian McCaffrey's return,
yes,
is on the other side, the 49ers defense is second in the league against the pass, but 19th against the run. Now, the Tampa Bay running game hasn't been great, but I think it's been better than you think when they give it to Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker.
Yes.
My guess is they can run on the 49ers.
I think they can, and I think they're going to have to. Again, Mike Evans is still not practicing. Sterling Sharp is on the – not Sterling Sharp, that would be something. Sterling Shepard has a hip injury and a groin injury. He did not practice, so that isn't the guy they've been going to as their possession guy with Godwin out. Baker Mayfield has a toe injury, so they may really be trying to establish the run. And you're right, they're much more creative running the ball right now. Bucky Irving is more capable of generating yards after contact or avoiding contact. So is Tucker, and then White kind of gets mixed in there. It's not the Buccaneers' offense of last two or three.
And McMillan missed last week with a hamstring injury, so I don't know what McMillan's status is. Like, they are down a lot of guys.
He's down. He is a DNP as well. So you're down to, I don't know who's left besides Kate Otten at tight end.
Kate Otten and what's number 10? Trey Palmer.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and Rashad White, and a lot of pony personnel with two running backs, including Rashad White, who's a good pass catcher.
Right.
Flip it around. Two strategies that the Buccaneers defense uses. They blitz a lot.
Yes.
Purdy is not great against the blitz this year. This year, he only has an 8% pass DVOA against the blitz, according to FTN Stats Hub. On the other hand, the Bucs play a lot of zone.
Okay.
And Purdy is third in the league against zones.
Right. And a lot of this, we're trying to sort of gauge it with a McCaffrey return while also subtracting out what we saw earlier in the season when he had Ayuk available.
Yeah, a lot of talk about McCaffrey has been the struggles in the red zone for the 49ers. They're not as bad in the red zone as you think. They're actually 11th in red zone DVOA.
Okay.
But with McCaffrey back, that should be like second. I mean, like, McCaffrey absolutely helps in the red zone. Like, there's no question about it.
Right, because you can't, if you get the touchdown, you don't have to settle for the field goal. I'm guessing what's happening in a few cases is those settle for field goals. While we look at them, they're bad. There are other teams that are getting stopped or committing turnovers, getting sacked out of field goal range, other things that the 49ers don't do. I want to do something. One reason why the Buccaneers Delta is like that and why their playoff odds stay so high, if they win this game, they have a tiebreaker against the Niners for wild card. They already have a tiebreaker against Eagles for wild card. They have a tiebreaker against the Commanders if all hell breaks loose for the Commanders for a wild card. And you mentioned in the Monday show, the end of their schedule is hilarious.
Yeah.
Now, I just looked this up. The Buccaneers are plus 210 right now to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I like that bet. I honestly do.
Right.
They could lose this game.
Yes.
And then go 6-1 over their last 7 and finish 10-7, and that's a playoff spot.
And in lieu of that, the over at plus 100 is 8.5 wins. And if you go, and this is 4 that they have right now, even if they lose this game, if you look at the end of that schedule, like you said, 6-1, 5-2, that feels like it's almost in the bag. There's 2 Panthers games in there. There's a Raiders game in there. Every team has fired coaches or has an injured quarterback or something at the end of their schedule.
Line on this game is 49ers minus 5.5.
Yeah, pick it.
I think a lot of the feeling about the line is how much credit do you give McCaffrey coming back. And my guess is McCaffrey coming back is not getting a full load. So I would go Bucs plus 5.5 here.
Ooh. I think that the Bucs are a weaker team than DVOA is showing right now. I know they have 2 overtime
because of the injuries and
because of the injuries. They have 2 overtime losses. I get that in the last couple of weeks. They don't really have a quality win on their schedule since the Eagles in week 4, and the Eagles were without their wide receivers and their right tackle, et cetera. I don't see them at this point being the equal of 49ers, even with a half available Christian McCaffrey. So I would go with Niners.
Broncos at Chiefs. It's another big 1 p.m. game. The Chiefs are basically in. The Broncos are in the playoffs 73% of the time with a win, 47% of a time with a loss. Here's a stat that I feel is shocking. The Broncos are number 1 in ESPN's pass rush win rate.
Yeah, no, they get in the backfield.
Who are those guys, right? It's Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito and Zach Allen at the 5 tech, and they're getting after the quarterback.
They're trading guys away.
Great offensive line. This is a great offensive line for the Chiefs.
Right. By the way, I mean, the Broncos are like, yeah, we can just get rid of Brandon Browning. We don't even need him anymore. They traded away during the season. Like, that's how many guys they got. And it's legit. There's a lot of speed there. It's a very aggressive defense. I think they got waves of guys there. Zach Allen, part of that. Quick note on the Chiefs injury report. Chiefs coming off Monday night. It's full of banged up guys. It's like, in addition to the fact that we haven't seen Juju Smith for a while, guys who are like limited or getting their rest day included Mecole Hardman, Kareem Hunt, George Karlaftis, Travell Wharton, who's been a pretty good ball player, Wharton. So it's worth keeping in mind as they come off of a overtime game on Monday night.
I checked some blitz statistics because we know that Spagnuolo likes to blitz in selected times, and we know that the Broncos blitz a lot as well.
Mm-hmm.
The classic thing is don't blitz Mahomes. Mahomes DVOA this year against the blitz is only 15%.
Oh, interesting.
But Bo Nix against the blitz, minus 24%.
A lot of rookies, they don't have a pickup plan that really makes a lot of sense. I wanted to ask you this also. Chiefs defense against short passes as they face Lieutenant Beauregard sideways and the all slants offense here.
3rd in the league.
At stopping short passes?
Yes.
That's a problem. Now let's start throwing downfield a little bit more successfully and a little more regularly, but it's still, I think a lot of his downfield passes, there's a lot of garbage time in that data, or there's a lot of Panthers games. You mentioned blitzing him. You also want to keep Bo Nix in the pocket.
Yes.
Can run. He makes plays on the run. He made a couple plays against the Ravens on the run. He is 32nd in completion rate in the NFL and 34th in yards per attempt between Mason Rudolph and Aiden O'Connell on the list when he's in the pocket. So you can blitz him. You also want to contain him because he will gash you on a run.
Yeah, the Chiefs should win this at home. The line is 8.
Nope.
It feels non-bettable with a line of 8. Like, that seems about right.
It seems about right. I would actually almost lean Broncos because we saw proof of concept on Monday night, what it looks like when the Chiefs outplay you, and yet it's still overtime. And if this was in Denver, I'd be a totally different mindset about it coming off of that Monday night game. But I would either avoid it or lean for the backdoor cover of the Broncos.
Useful Title says it's interesting to see what Mahomes' numbers will be once him and Hopkins work together more. I mean, between regression towards previous performance and the arrival of DeAndre Hopkins, I think everybody is expecting that Mahomes' numbers will improve in the second half of the season.
Yes. And he's been playing better than his numbers. Anyone who's watching those games can tell.
Yeah, well, the receivers are,
These receivers are terrible, and he's got to sort of make it up as he goes along. He's throwing left-handed, he's throwing underhanded, and he's doing all that other stuff.
All right, one more 1 p.m. game to look at is the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Washington Commanders. Steelers are in 91% of the time if they win, 75% if they lose. Commanders, 97% with a win, 91% with a loss. Owen F. asks, is the Steelers' style of play sustainable?
Yes, they've been doing it
for 5 years. The team just totally dependent on TJ Watt staying healthy. It seems like a major vulnerability. I mean, they do have other pass rushers like Highsmith, and they're getting good play from a guy like a Beanie Bishop and Dante Jackson. And Russell has played better than Fields in his couple of starts. And this is who the Steelers, I mean, is 6-2 sustainable? No. But a winning record, like this is who the Steelers are every year.
Right. This is like the last 3 years of Steelers football, right down to the slow starts at the beginnings of these games where they do all their damage in the third and fourth quarters. And yes, they are incredibly reliant on TJ Watt. And let's talk about, the Vikings and Justin Jefferson. They are some of these non-quarterbacks at that high level. It's like, yes, the team is going to be significantly weaker without them. But in terms of pass rushers, you mentioned Highsmith. Steelers are getting some guys back off the bye, including Nick Herbig, the brother of Nate Herbig, who is a backup edge rusher. Center Zach Frazier, that's a potentially big one. And Cordarrelle Patterson should all be back after missing a couple games before the bye.
Commanders weak on run defense. And I know Tomlin likes to run and Steelers like to run, and they'll put Warren and Harris out there. It's a weak run defense for the Commanders.
Yeah. They also have Lattimore now, but he was being Marshawn Lattimore trade deadline acquisition was being evaluated on Wednesday for the hamstring that was bothering him in New Orleans. I don't think that was a trade deadline hamstring like Devontae Adams had. I think it was a injury hamstring.
An actual injury,
not a don't feel like it, I'm too valuable as trade bait hamstring. So we'll see what that does. That obviously helps their pass defense. An
interesting bet for this game might be longest pass because Jaden Daniels is second among qualifying quarterbacks in deep passing DVOA. And Russell Wilson, of course, has been amazing in 2 games in a small sample, passing deep, and we know that's what he does well.
Yes, I am pulling those up. Those are some of my favorite bets, pulling them up. Longest completion over-unders, Jaden Daniels at 35.5. I'd jump on that. Wilson's at 36.5, which is right in the same ballpark. If you like the longest completion props, I think both of those are pretty good. Again, you're facing, especially in the case of the Commanders, a pretty porous pass defense that'll give Pickens or whoever a chance to get these plays.
Yes, the Commanders, are porous. And here's the Steelers' pass defense. Here's interesting. They're allowing a lot of yards to other receivers.
Interesting.
Which is a lot of the Commanders' passing game, because after McLaurin, everyone's basically the same. So they spread it out a lot to Noah Brown, Diami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, there's a lot of other. And the others have been very effective because of the way the offense is designed this year.
You wanted to ask me about the Commanders and fumble luck.
Yes, I did. So I was looking at a couple of things about the Commanders. I feel they're a little overvalued right now. And 2 things stuck out to me. One is 4th down conversions. They're 11 of 11. And secondly, on fumbles, 8 fumbles, only 1 fumble lost.
Yes, I have. You may have special teams that I didn't write down.
Okay.
But what I have written down is they have the best fumble luck in the NFL at 71%, 6 of 7 on offense, 5 of 7 on defense. Okay. And it is a big reason for the gap between DVOA and EPA when it comes to Washington, because EPA doesn't correct for fumble luck.
Interesting. So there's something there.
There is absolutely something there. By the way, the worst fumble luck is the Raiders, who have recovered 1 of 10 on offense and 0 of 4 on defense. I believe they do not have a single actual forced fumble on defense.
That's Luke Getsy's fault.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
Luke Getsy's fault.
I'm going to ask you to email me that stat. I'm doing a thing on the Raiders for next week. So that's interesting.
The Commanders are favored by 3 at home.
Jumping on the Steelers.
You do? You like the Steelers on that, huh?
I like the Steelers. I like them healthy off of a bye against a team that, like I said, I have this feeling that we have a little overvalued Commanders. You helped me out. You kind of verified me a little bit with that, with the fumble block. I am going with the Steelers on this one.
I would pretty much call it a non-bet.
Fair enough.
but you know what? If you want a fun parlay would be to parlay the 2 longest passes and just spent the whole game hoping for deep shots.
Anarchy, root for anarchy. It's a fun thing to do on Thursday nights too. Do it tonight. You've got Jamar Chase. You've got why am I drawing a blank? Zay Flowers.
Zay Flowers.
Yeah, who can catch a screen pass and turn it into a 40-yard run.
We're going to skip 4 p.m. because
What?
most of the nation is getting Eagles Cowboys with Cooper Rush.
Coward.
Like, I understand that the Cowboys are the Cowboys, but the Cardinals Jets is the better game. But Cardinals Jets is only going to the New York and Arizona markets.
I have nothing to say. Nothing to say about that. Okay. Let's just get
8 p.m. is a good one, though.
Yes.
8 p.m. is Lions at Texans, where the Lions are in the playoffs 99.7% with a win and 98.2% with a loss. And the Texans, even though they seem to be struggling a little bit, 98.8 with a win and 94.6 with a loss, because they're still pretty much in command of the AFC South.
Which is a joke of a division, and the Colts are throwing Flacco out there until big. We meant to do that energy with that. So the Texans are in no matter what, and the Lions are ivory soap, 99.7%.
The number 2 pass rush, according to ESPN's pass rush win rate, Houston Texans.
Okay.
Against the awesome Detroit offensive line, except Will Anderson Jr. has a hamstring injury and may not play.
Will Anderson, yes, he did not practice with an ankle. One of his primary backups, Derek Barnett, who Eagles fans might remember, he was do not practice with a calf and a shoulder injury. And there's all kinds of banged up guys on the injury list. Also, by the way, Kenyon Green, the human turnstile, he has a shoulder injury. He did not practice. Heaven knows who his backup is. Limited participant in practice was Shaq Mason, the good guard, who's been better than Kenyon Green.
Yes, but worse than he was last year.
Worse than he's been for the last 5-6 years. He's on the injury list as well. So a very banged up Texans team. The Lions are in better shape overall.
I went to the FTN Stats Hub and I looked up Stroud against the blitz this year.
Mm-hmm.
Minus 27% DVOA.
Ouch. I'll call that and I'll raise it though. So bad against the blitz. He has been pressured by 3 or 4 pass rushers, so no blitz. He has been pressured on a non-blitz 90 times this year. Geno Smith is number 1 with 98. Then Daniel Jones and Stroud are tied. So when you blitz him is bad, but if you don't blitz him, you're still going to get pressure on him, which is bad.
And when you bring pressure, you got to get the ball out quick to your hot receiver. That means short passes. And the number 1 defense in the league against short pass is the Detroit Lions.
The Detroit Lions, who take care of
And Iceman says, watching the Lions D, they don't seem like the 3rd best pass defense. They seem to give up plenty of yards. My guess is that 1, that's an issue of total versus efficiency because they face a lot of passes because they're winning games.
Yeah.
And 2, they're 18th against deep passes.
Right.
So my guess is what they're giving up is chunks on big passes and not little passes.
I tend to agree based on anecdotally what we've seen. And and there's a lot of fourth quarters in there too.
And Stroud, can he stay upright enough? Can he stay upright enough to throw deep passes? Right. I mean, there were some points against the Jets last week where it was just, I'm dying here. I'm going to chuck it. I
don't think it's going to be as bad because Quinnen Williams was just destroying everybody in there. And DJ Reader's a pretty good ball player. He can cause some problems. I believe he's still healthy. He's the one left, but I don't think it's going to be quite that bad. But the Texans have a lot to figure out, and I don't think they're going to figure it out. Nico Collins, I think they just opened his window. Maybe he'll be back in a week.
He will not. I don't think he's back for this game, though.
No, he will be back probably in about a week or 2, and that will be a big boost to them. But I think they've got to redesign what they're doing if they have to beat better opposition like the Lions, not go out there and slap.
So Lions favored by 3.5 on the road. I like the Lions.
I like the Lions too. I think I don't see a Texans, ability to keep Stroud upright, like you say.
Yeah, it's really, there's a lot of pass rush. I don't know if Zadarius Smith will be ready to play for the Lions, but still
they're giving him rest days all week. He's one of the veterans. If you've heard about the veterans who are going to play 18 games with no bye.
Oh, yeah.
Darius is one of them. So Dan Campbell has kind of said he's not going to practice this week. That means they'll probably package him in 10 plays, 3rd and 20, whatever, that kind of thing.
Good luck, Stroud. Have fun running.
Poor guy.
All right. That does it for our Week 10 preview. Thank you to everybody watching. Thank you to everybody listening. Don't forget Mike Tanier's Substack at miketanier.substack.com. and to subscribe to FTN Fantasy to get access to all those Stats Hub stats that I've been giving all show, like DVOA against the blitz and DVOA in man and zone coverage. It's all there for you with a subscription. We will be back Monday morning at 11 a.m. to talk about all of these games and preview next week's Monday Night Football. Until then, everybody, enjoy the weekend. For Mike Tanier, I'm Aaron Schatz. So long, everyone.